Hi everybody, welcome to our 2:30 stress break for today. So today's stress break is going to focus on us doing a quick activity, which is a self-compassion note to ourselves. Quickly, to go over what self-compassion is before we get into this, it takes three things to be considered self-compassionate to ourselves. It takes mindfulness, so the ability to be aware but non-judgmental. So if I have a feeling, just knowing what that feeling is and listening to it without jumping to another place or seeking to judge. So mindfulness. Self-kindness, so just like it sounds, being kind to ourselves. And the third piece that's required for self-compassion is a recognition of common humanity, which means that when we're having experiences where we're stressed out or embarrassed or ashamed, we realize that we are not the only ones to have had this, and that a lot of people around us have had the same experience as us. And so self-compassion can be compared to self-esteem and contrasted with it a bit. Just like self-esteem, self-compassion is a way we can relate to ourselves so that we have a sense of self-worth. The thing is, though, is that self-esteem asks us, how are you different? How are you special than other people? And we base our sense of self-worth on that. Now, the problem with that is when things are going well, you're going to feel great. But when things are not, or there's struggles, it's going to be really hard. Because what if you're not better than other people at something? How do you still then have a good sense of self-worth? That's where self-compassion comes in. Because if I think, well, I'm a person, I'm kind to myself, and I have shared experiences with people around me, I have worth just by being me, right? Just by being in the world, just like everybody else does. And I don't need to differentiate myself from them to realize that. And so that is where self-compassion leads us. It's sometimes really, really difficult to be kind to ourselves, especially if we have biases or thoughts that being kind is a sign of weakness, or being kind means you never have to try hard again, or anything like that. That's definitely a misunderstanding of what self-kindness is. Self-kindness is just approaching ourselves gently and in a supportive way. And in the research that I've seen, when you're able to be supportive to yourself in times of struggle, you'll be able to do more. You'll be able to get more out of yourself through that kindness. And also, it feels nicer. It just feels nicer. So, how we're going to try to get at that today is to do a self-compassion letter or note. You can choose which one you'd like to do depending on how much time you'd like to spend. If you're willing to spend 1 or 2 minutes writing, I would say write yourself a note. And if you're willing to spend 5 or 10 minutes writing, I would say go for the letter. Feel free to pause this video and take the time you need. So what I'd like you to do is to have some sort of way to write, whatever your preference is. I find for things like this, handwriting helps me engage my emotions more than, say, being on the computer. But I'll leave it up to you to decide what will work best for you. So what we're going to do is I want you to think of something in the last week where maybe you had some stress, some nervousness, maybe a little bit of shame or embarrassment. Nothing too big, something small. But we're going to take that little moment, and I want, in our writing, our letter to ourselves, for us to show ourselves some kindness about what happened, some acknowledgement of the feeling, and a connection to others. So let's say, for example, I got really, really stressed out earlier this week because there's lots of new things happening, and I just got overwhelmed. So I would recognize, wow, Joey, and you can write it just directly to yourself if you'd like. Joey, it's been a really hard week. I recognize that there's been a lot of stress and a lot of difficult feelings. But you know, that's something that a lot of people have been feeling these days. And it's okay to feel it. I hope you can take some time for yourself to help yourself feel better. Quick example of how we can get in those 3 different sections in kind of a note format or a letter format. It depends who you are. Sometimes it's easiest to write it to yourself, just directly, like you write your name. Sometimes you might want to think about as if you're writing to a close friend to help us get to that sense of kindness. Or you can think of writing from the perspective as an ultimately kind and wisdom-filled friend to you. And so whichever perspective helps you get to that place where you can speak to yourself in a way that's kind. And this is all based off of the research of Dr. Kristin Neff. Her last name is spelled Neff. If you're interested more about self-compassion, I highly recommend checking her out. So, we are going to get right into writing at this point. The one thing that I would ask that everyone does is just think about something that they could say to themselves to show kindness, because that's the piece we really don't want to leave out. I find that actually kids in grade 1 and 2 understand intuitively what it is to be kind to ourselves better and quicker than anybody else that I've met. And what they have said to me when I've asked them, how will we express kindness to ourselves, are things like, thank you for trying to show kindness, I love you, and my favorite, I choose you forever. And I never thought I'd have so many feelings writing down "I choose you forever" on a piece of paper to myself. But oh man, it got me. It was meaningful. And so you don't have to write those. You can choose whatever you'd like. But I'd like you to think about how you could finish your letter with something really nice like that, an acknowledgement of your caring or kindness for yourself. So we'll get started. I'll just give a quick 20-second break for the video so you can pause it, and when you're done and ready, we'll come back. So good luck. Great. So I hope that wasn't too difficult to get down some things to say. It can be hard when we're not used to relating to ourselves in this way. So whether or not it was easy or difficult, I'm appreciative that you took that time for yourself to write that. So here's what I would like you to do. Sometimes when we're in the moment, it's hard to actually feel the things that we're writing to ourselves. So what I'd ask you to do is just take that note, take that letter, and just stick it somewhere you're not going to see it for about a week. And in a week, I'd like you to grab it and read it. The reason for this is I accidentally did this for myself one time. I was doing this activity with a group. I wrote down mine as well, put it in my back pocket, and forgot about it. And I went to do some laundry later on that week, the next week, and when I read it, it meant so much more to me having that week difference. I mean, it was nice to write it. It felt good. It was a little awkward and good and nervous and all those feelings mixed in. But having that week, that nervousness kind of faded away, and any stress I had faded away too. And so I was able to just sit with the note kind of as it was. And it was much more meaningful for me. So I recommend for you, find some place, where no one else will kind of see it, and just put it aside for yourself. The last thing we're going to do today is we're going to introduce some self-soothing techniques that relate to self-compassion. This again is based off of the work of Dr. Kristin Neff. So there are many different options for how we can do this. We're just going to run through a few. What I'd like you to do is to take both your hands and gently place them on your shoulders, and then very gently start writing down like this. So if you've watched yesterday's video, you'll know that our body, our mind, and our heart are all connected. So if we change one, we can change the rest too. As I'm doing this, I feel my body calming down, and in response, my emotions are feeling more calm, and my mind is too. Our bodies know what it is to respond to touch, and to respond to, when we give someone we love a hug, and we can actually activate that just ourselves by doing some of these activities. So at this point, I'd like you to start squeezing, moving down. And for each of these, I just want you to notice how you feel. Most people have a preference, so I'd just like you to think and choose your favorite at the end of this. With each one just long enough you can get a sense of what it is. All right, next I'd like you to wrap yourself up in a nice big hug, and we'll just hold this for 10 or 20 seconds. Again, just noticing how we feel. All right, next up, I just ask that you take a hand and just put it gently over your heart. Why we're paying attention to how we feel is because depending on our mood, we might want to use different ways of calming ourselves down. So if we're in a very sort of soft mood, quiet mood, maybe this hand over our heart will be good. But maybe if we're having maybe some more anger, or we have high energy activation, you can take your fist, place it directly over your heart, and then cup your hand over it. And for me, when I feel that difference, that solidity, it kind of grounds me in a different way than just my hand would. We'll hold this again for just 10 or 20 seconds. All right, next, we're going to move to placing a hand very gently on our cheek. See if you can pay attention to all the things that you can feel. Whenever we're interacting with ourselves, there's different places we can focus on. So I can think about how my cheek feels with my hand on it. I can also feel how my hand feels with my cheek, touching it. So there's a couple of different places to focus on. Taking our second hand and just pressing gently on our temples and holding our face like this. If you have somebody watching you from outside the video, they might think you look pretty silly right now. That's okay. As long as you're noticing how you're feeling, as long as you're feeling calm. doing the right thing. Even if it's a bit odd if you haven't done it before. Okay, so the last one I'd like to present is just very gently coming down. Again, you don't have to remember all these. I'd just like you to maybe figure out if one or two are your favorite and remember those. Awesome, thanks. And you can put your hands down. So where I like to go to the body to do self-soothing in that way is if I try to go into my mind and be kind to myself and I'm just too stressed out or in too negative a place and it's not possible, I think, okay, I'm starting with my mind and feelings too early. I gotta start with my body. If I calm my body down, then hopefully I'll be in a gentle enough place for myself that I can then think about that self-kindness and do that cognitively. So that's where I go to the body when I'm just not feeling well enough or kind enough to myself to be able to go straight into talking myself through something in a positive way. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Good luck remembering and reading your note in a week from today. And I hope to see you again on Monday, and we will continue on. Thanks very much, everybody.